Hi everyone, welcome to Wool and Spinning. My name is Rachel. It is Saturday, July 3rd, 2021, and we are coming to you live from just outside of the Greater Vancouver area here in Southwest British Columbia, here in Canada. So welcome everybody. It's so good to see you. I've got a big cup of coffee here. We have had an exhausting week. I am sure many of you have as well. We have had an awesome week, but it's been exhausting. So we were as a province, we're finally able to travel a little bit and move around. So we took the opportunity to go and see my brother and sister-in-law and my niece and nephew for 3 days and 2 nights over on Vancouver Island. They live in Victoria. For those who are kind of know the sort of geographical area here, and we had a great time. It was wonderful. It was very, very hot. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or I guess Saturday, Sunday, Monday here in British Columbia, we were hitting record temperatures that beat temperatures that were set, temperature records that were set in the I think it was the 1930s. Lots and lots of fires, and it's been sort of a heartbreaking week, but also just because of the heat. But for us, it's also been a really great week. So Vancouver Island was great because there's always a little bit of a breeze over there, and it's you know, the ocean's right there, so it's always a little bit cooler, or was a little bit cooler, and that was really lovely. So we had a great time. I did take my knitting, but I did barely anything. I picked it up one evening on the first night, probably did about 10 rows, and I put it away. I really wanted to be really present after not seeing them for a year, and not wanting them to feel that I was distracted by my knitting, because sometimes it's not so much we're not distracted, and we know that we're hearing what's going on and we're hearing the conversation and whatnot, but I think sometimes people think that we're not paying attention. It's more of a reflection on the person sharing and the person and them needing you to sort of make eye contact or be more present. So we might think that we're being present, but they're maybe seeing something different. So I wanted to just make sure that they knew that I was there and that I was fully there. So it was nice to take a bit of a break, rest my hands, yeah. So how is everybody? How are you guys doing well? Or are you doing well? I know much of us are, yeah. So Kelly said the longest stretch of over 30 degrees Celsius temperatures. And of course, on Monday here in the Greater Vancouver area, we hit almost 47. It was 46.6, which is like unheard of. Part of the problem too, it's maybe a little bit difficult for people who live in hot climates to understand. So just sort of to take a step back for a minute, you know, there are areas of the world, areas in North America that are used to these really hot temperatures, but nobody here has air conditioning, like nobody. So we're one of the only houses on our street that has it, and it's just because it was an upgrade with our furnace. So if you just kind of take a moment to think about that and how challenging that is for people. It's really hard. So yeah, lots of chat about temperatures and yeah. So I am kind of jealous of some of my UK friends right now who are experiencing a rainy July. I'm kind of jealous. We often get a rainy, awful July here. So in today's show, we've got some spinning at the wheel. We've got some Wensleydale that we are going to pop into today as part of our breed study. We are also going to have a look at my Magnolia Bloom, because we never really got a chance to talk about that sweater. And we are also going to talk about my new knit that's on my dress form. And she's just a little bit out of the way right now because there's just a lot of stuff in this space, because as you can see, I pulled out my Saxony for today's work. So, and then we've got a lot of community participation, and I have the new breed and color study to announce and to give you some information about, and I can also answer any questions that you guys have about that. So I hope that that sounds good. So without further ado, let's get into the show. So I think that where we will start is actually my Magnolia Bloom, so that I can step back and stand up, and then we'll come back and we'll do our spinning at the wheel, and we'll look at Wensleydale today. So for the breed study that we're sort of doing at the wheel every show sort of throughout the summer is we started off with our fine to medium wools, and we're done that now. So last week we looked at Finn, so that was our last wool that was sort of part of that study. So we started off with sort of the classic, which is merino, and then we went into the Rambouillet, which is part of the spinning sheep breeds kit from the School of Sweet Georgia, and then the final installment of that study was the Finn. So we've kind of got this nice spectrum of fine to medium wools. So we've got two like really fine wools, and then we've got a medium. They all spun up very differently. They all created very different yarns, and so we'll talk about that when we pull out the Wensleydale. So what we're going to sort of transition to for the next 3 weeks is our long wools, and then we'll transition into the downs, and then we'll finish up with the primitives. So that is sort of something to look forward to. So before we sort of get into that, the girls did my nails while we were in Victoria. It's that kids nail polish that you have to peel off. So it's a little bit distracting to me to have that pink flashing around, but hopefully you guys can ignore it. So let's talk about my Magnolia Bloom for a minute, because this yarn and this sweater has a very special place in my heart. And so to be able to highlight that and to share that with you guys here is I feel really privileged to be able to do that. So that you guys are willing to listen and that you're willing to hear my story. So let me just push my chair back and we'll put this on and I'll model it for you first. I will say that this sweater is has been a surprise. I actually don't know, Eve, when the next module is being released. That's something that Felicia does behind the scenes to sort of organize everything. So this is Magnolia Bloom. It's by a pattern by Camilla. Is it Vlad or Vad? I can't remember actually. That's really bad. I should know that. Vad. So let me get my hair out of the way. So this is a crew neck pullover. Obviously, I just pulled it over and it's not a cardigan, so one would assume. So basically what it is, let me just kind of crouch down here for a quick sec. I'll just do a curtsy. It's creased from being folded, but basically what it is you've got these absolutely massive leaves that go all the way around the yoke, and I'll turn around in a sec. And then you've got these huge baubles here that are really cool, and then this lace work. What I really like about the lace work is it ends above the bra line, so you can wear like something underneath and you won't sort of have to worry about what you're wearing in terms of covering up and modesty and some of that stuff, because for me that's really important. What ended up happening with this sweater, and I'll talk about the yarn in just a minute, but what ended up happening with this sweater is I worked my way down. I worked it per pattern, and I realized right away that the neck was too tight. So the neck is actually supposed to be a big, I think it's 2x2 or 1x1. I can't actually remember. I think it must be 1x1 because it matches the cuffs. Sort of 1x1 ribbing at the top, and it just, when I did that, it would have been fine, except that it was just too tight and it felt really restrictive, and I talked about that on the podcast. So I ripped it back and I ended up picking up the same stitches all the way around, so it goes all the way around to the back. And I ended up picking them all up, and then I knit a row and I cast off. So as I was knitting, I cast off. And so I picked up and knit around and then I cast off basically. And that creates this sort of almost this look of a faux I-cord, but it's not the tightness of an I-cord. So it's still got that stretch and it still gives me that little bit of room around the neck. Because, and it doesn't feel quite as restrictive. This yarn is quite toothy. It's a 4-ply, it's Custom Woolen Mills 4-ply, I think they call it their 4-ply sock. It's basically tough as nails. It's not soft, it's not pliable, it's very stiff. I'm sure it would make really great socks, to be honest. It's too thick for like fine socks that you're gonna wear in your shoes. The sweater is knit on 6.5mm needles, if that kind of gives you an idea of how thick this yarn is. It's a heavy Aran weight. bordering on a bulky, to be honest. So I worked all the way down the yoke, and you sort of have to finish the yoke before you separate for the yoke and the sleeves. And in the pattern, you actually continue working the yoke for a while. So this is actually up quite a bit higher in the pattern. So my row gauge was off quite a bit. So when I finished the chart, I separated for the sleeves right away. And then I talked about it on the podcast. What I was really concerned about was that the armhole itself for the sleeve after I separated was massive. Like it was humongous. I did measure it, the arm sky, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like 20 plus inches. So what I ended up doing was I knit the body for a bit, and then it was just really bothering me, and I just thought there's no way this sweater is going to fit me. The arm sky is just too big, so the radius around it, and it was this big gaping hole. Like I'm not lying. It was probably as big as my head. So I thought, I'm going to stop where I am. I'm just going to tuck the ball up into the body of the sweater and into the yoke so it stays put. And I'm going to grab another ball of yarn and I'll start the sleeves. So I did that. And what I ended up doing was I only picked up what I absolutely had to pick up to close the armhole. So under here. So I picked up the bare minimum stitches. And then I decreased immediately. So in here, there's decreases right here. Every row, every like second, like row 1, row 3, row 5 kind of thing, for about 2 inches. And I thought it would make it look really super weird, but it actually doesn't. And it ends up sitting really nicely, and I can wear it and it doesn't look weird at all. And it actually gives me a really nice amount of ease, because there's actually quite a lot of ease in here. Which has actually worked out really, really well. So after I did that and I knit one sleeve, I realized that I hadn't actually decreased enough. I got to about here. So I ripped it back and I tried again, and the second time round was correct. And then I realized that I was actually decreasing too quickly and that the sleeves were getting too small. So I ripped back again, and then I started decreasing I think I ended up decreasing every 7 rows until here. And then I just knit straight, because by then they were like just the perfect amount of ease. They were 8 inches around, which is what I like for my cuffs. I've kind of learned that over time. The 8 inches, an 8-inch cuff is about right. And I ended up really liking the sleeves. I knit them quite, long. So I knit them right down to my thumb. So a full 19-inch sleeve. And then I finished off the body. And so when I finished the body, sorry for the noise of the chair, it's just scraping this morning. For the body, I actually had cast off here, so I had done the ribbing here. And I put it on with my jeans, and I really like high-waisted jeans. And I put it on with the jeans, and I could just feel myself pulling at it already. And so I ripped it out when I was on a call one morning, and I just redid the ribbing. So I added an extra 2 inches of stockinette. And then I redid the ribbing. And I'm really glad that I took the time to do that, because it's made it just the absolute right length. So this is the back of the sweater. And my waist is here, and it's sitting about 5 inches below my waist. So my hip bones are here. It's hard to tell in a skirt, right? But I can see this being an outfit that I wear in the fall when it's like that shoulder season and you're still able to wear lightweight skirts, but you want a sweater on. I can see this being a uniform for sure. So let me take it off, because it's way too hot right now to wear it. And that is that. Thank you, Josie, for your compliments about the Magnolia. Now the yarn, I would not buy this yarn again. I would not knit with this yarn again. It was very, very difficult to find a pattern for it. If you're gonna knit slippers, this is your yarn. But I bought this yarn in Whitehorse the day that my dad was diagnosed stage 4. And it has a lot of meaning for me, and I think that's part of the reason why it was so difficult to find a pattern. I knit with it quite a number of times. I've shared various projects on the podcast in this yarn. Just nothing was working. If I had had more of it, it would have actually probably been a bit better, but I only had 5 skeins. And so I was a little bit hamstrung with what I could make. But in hindsight, it was just waiting for this pattern and waiting for me to kind of work through the discomfort of sort of, I'm not sure this is going to work, and sort of putting it aside for a while and then picking it back up again and then putting it aside and doing that dance, right? It's a dance. So thank you so much, you guys. Vicky says, I love everything about this sweater. The length of the sweater is perfect. It is, Kimberly. Thank you. I aspire. Thank you, Chris. You know what? If you guys ever have any questions about sweater modification and you're just trying to figure it out and you're just really feeling like you're stuck, please post in the sweater spin or in the general channel, even if it's not in hand spun, just post it, because this is how we learn and this is how we figure out about sweater modification and sweater, using these patterns. I sort of think of patterns as a guidepost, and you really start to get to know your own body the more that you knit and make sweaters. You have to be willing to rip back. It's just the nature of the beast. But it's worth it to rip back a sweater like that. Like that was an afternoon. It was actually Mike's birthday, where I sat there and worked on it, and I was feeling very quiet and very reflective, and everybody was sort of feeling the same way. And I just sat there and I worked on the sleeve, and I just thought, you know what, if this doesn't work, it doesn't work. Well, it was finished by Monday. So it's a huge needles though, remember, big needles. So just, post questions and ask. Things tend to get lost in #random on the Slack channel. So stick to the general and the sweater spin channels if you're asking about sweater modification, so that we can see it and that we can really help with that, because that's really how we're going to learn. So yeah, Chris, keep your questions running. And I can't wait to see some of your sweaters that you've got planned, because you're working on that Fox Thoughts, which is just amazing. Lovely, beautiful sweater. Thank you. Yeah, and it's got a really great memories. I think it's one of those sweaters, like even if I don't wear it for a few years or it gets put away or whatever, it's one of those sweaters like I'll never ever give it away, because it just means so much, hence the unrealistic expectations about what the yarn was going to turn into, right? Like that's often what happens. We buy this fiber, we buy this yarn, we buy something, that we're going to do something with, and we've got all these expectations because it's got this deep, deep, deep meaning, and then we're disappointed with the outcome, right? And really it needs to be about the process. So good reminder. Big needles hurt my wrists really, really badly. It's why I don't work with bulky yarn and Aran weight yarn, and it's also why I don't work with worsted weight yarn very much. I pretty much have to stay with the needle sizes between 3 and 4.5, and even 4.5 can start to push it. I did find that the square needles helped a little bit, so the bigger needles that are square. I think Knitter's Pride does a set of square needles. There's a couple of companies that do the square needles, and when I didn't do it with this sweater, but I should have. When I'm working with bigger needles, I do tend to go to my square needles, and I do find that it helps for a little while, but it's not a complete fix. So let's pivot to our spinning at the wheel segment for our breed study that we're working on. So this is all through the School of Sweet Georgia and the new sheep breeds workshop that is being released. It's being released in chunks. So the fine to medium is already up. The long wools is already up, which is what we're going to pivot to today. So our fine to medium spins are done. The sheep breed kit includes merino, Rambouillet, and fin, like I said earlier, and the fin is what we were doing last time, and that's the one that I wanted to show you. So this is a beautiful medium wool. Sometimes you can get it as fine as 24 microns, which is getting to that kind of line of finer wool, especially if you end up with a lamb's fleece. I spun a lamb's fleece back in, it was pin drafted roving, but it was from a lamb's fleece that Liz had processed, and she sent me some for my natural shades project that I'm still spinning for. And it was really, really, really fine. And it was blended with a little bit of silk, and so it was even finer. So we have to take that into account too. But for the fine to medium wools, this is a great smattering. These three, the merino, the Rambouillet, and the fin, are a great smattering of wools that are sort of, in the fine to medium wool kind of category. The one thing that I sort of want to highlight is that most of us spend the majority of our spinning career in this category of wool. So even though maybe we haven't exhausted it here on the podcast as we've been studying these, the reality is these are the ones that we all spin all the time. Polwarth, Targhee, now I'm drawing a blank of all the fine to medium wools, but you guys can throw out a whole bunch of them. I mean, you know, CVM, it's got a bit of a downy quality, but, you know, all of these wools kind of are in that category. And, you know, the beauty about this one with the fin is you've got the natural shade as well. So when you go to dye this, I mean, it's just going to come out absolutely beautifully. Of the three, I will admit that the fin is my favorite, but I do tend to lean more toward the medium wools anyways. I find I can wear them next to my skin. They don't bother me at all. And the nice thing is if you put a really lovely twist into them, so let me just hold this up to the camera. If you put a really lovely, sorry about my fingernails, if you put a really lovely twist into it, you end up with this just absolutely beautiful yarn. It's not hard spun. It's not particularly, you know, a massive amount of hard twist or high twist. It's just a really lovely balanced yarn with this absolutely gorgeous about 40-degree twist angle, but it's nice and soft and it hangs beautifully. This would be just a fantastic sweater yarn. And if you wanted to make it as a 3-ply like we talked about last week, I mean, that would just finish it off. It would just be unbelievable. So this came out at 14 wraps per inch for a really beautiful sport weight yarn. And if you did a 3-ply, you would end up with it would probably poof up to be about 11 wraps per inch probably for a 3-ply, and you would just end up with like this really great DK weight sweater yarn, which you know, a lot, I often feel like, do you guys feel like this too? A lot of patterns use DK weight yarn. Like if you're looking for like an all-round sweater yarn, I feel like DK is your bet. Like there's mostly DK weight yarns on the market, DK weight yarns in patterns. I feel like it's like, there's more DK weight sweaters patterns out there than any other weight of yarn, but I might be wrong about that. Maybe it's just my own biasy because I like sport weight and DK weight sweaters. I know when Ravelry first started, I felt like every sweater was always worsted weight. Like it was always like Cascade 220, Barocco, Ultra Alpaca. And then they sort of, and like Malabrigo worsted, that was the other one, that merino singles that they do. But I feel like it's shifted over the years to DK weight sweaters and sport weight sweaters. Sport weight's getting more and more common, but I feel like it's all DK. But not all, but like there's more DK weight sweaters than anything else. Does that make sense? I'm probably not explaining that well. So we are going to move into the long wools. So we're looking at, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at Romney. We are going to be looking at Wensleydale, one of my personal favorites, and then we're also going to be looking at Gotland. So Gotland is a really fun one because it's really easy to overspin, and you can create a really hard yarn really quickly and really easily. So we'll do that one last. I had written in the thing that we would do Wensleydale today, so if that's okay with you guys, we will start with the Wensleydale. The reason is because Wensleydale came up in an online discussion a few months ago, and I thought it was really interesting what was being said about Wensleydale and these ideas around how Wensleydale should be spun, and I've talked about shoulding on ourselves before. I did my Wensleydale for Long Way Homestead a couple of weeks ago, which I shared on the podcast, and one of the things that I really like about Wensleydale is, before I untwist this, it's sort of deceiving how the long wool yarns look different. Like sometimes you think, oh, it's not that different. Like how different can it be? These are all sheep. Well, this is the fin next to the Wensleydale. So this is the Wensleydale and this is the fin. So the fin is the medium to, it's the fine to medium, depending on the flock and where it comes from. It can be on the much finer scale. And again, depending on the crop the flock and the harvest, the shearing. We were out in the garden this morning. We were doing our big harvest because there's so much kale right now from the heat. It's unbelievable. So I've got agriculture farming in my head rather than agriculture, sheep husbandry. So I'm using the wrong terms, but I know you guys are with me. So, this is so fin, sort of medium to fine, next to this long wool and beautiful natural shades. And look at the difference. Look at how different these two yarns are. Like the Wensleydale has this gorgeous halo, much softer twist angle, It's got that beautiful sheen. It's that silvery gray. This is that, you know, and then the fin, it's silvery gray, but it's almost kind of a little bit brown. I see the brown. You guys probably don't quite so much. But very, very, very different yarns. And so one of the things about the long wools is people are always saying, oh, you only need enough twist to hold it together. Like, you don't want to over twist it. You're going to make rope, blah, blah, blah. You're right. That's correct. But on the other hand, you need enough twist to hold it together. So I find what often happens with Wensleydale when we're spinning it, and I see this again and again when I'm teaching in person, is that people underspin it to the extreme. So it's almost like we go, when we're talking about high twist, we go overboard. And then when we're talking low twist, we go overboard. So we need to sort of find somewhere in the middle here between high twist and low twist, where we get these beautiful yarns that are structurally stable, but they're not one extreme or the other to the extreme. Like when we're talking about cabling yarn, we need that extreme high twist in those 2-ply yarns to get it to cable. But we don't necessarily want that extreme high twist to make a 2-ply that's sort of kinky and curly when you take it off the bobbin, but then we wash it and it relaxes, right? So it's the same with the low twist. It's the same at the other end of the spectrum. One of the things that I really like about Wensleydale is it makes beautiful singles, and I can post some photos later in the Slack channel of Wensleydale singles. I can get a photograph of the Wensleydale singles next to this yarn so you guys can get an idea of how they spin differently. And one of the things that I shared in the Sweet Georgia workshop, this School of Sweet Georgia workshop for the long wools is, you know, if you've got some long wools in your stash that you don't think that you would be able to wear next to your skin or something, or you just want to do something different, you want to try something different, you could play around with making a boucle. The long wools are absolutely ideal for boucle. So Kelly says, yes, totally agree about the DK weight yarn. Sometimes sport, but they all seem to be about the same size. Okay, so I'm not out to lunch. And there was a time when fingering weight and sock weight was everywhere. You're right, Becca. I'd forgotten about that. I find I can substitute worsted for DK in most patterns. I find too, depending on how tightly you hold your yarn, like when you're actually knitting, you can go back and forth. Like sometimes DK and worsted, or even DK and sport, are interchangeable a little bit. All the patterns I knit are fingering. That's so funny, Eva. I think the trend has gone through various phases. Totally agree, Becca. Oh, I meant DK instead of worsted. Oh, so the other way, Vicky. Yeah, so I tend to sub DK for worsted, which is what I did with my Enchanté, which is behind me. I substituted a little bit because it calls for worsted weight, but I used a DK. Yeah, totally agree. By adjusting which size you knit, you can easily switch out of the two between DK and worsted. So let me just flip my cameras and then you guys can start to see what I'm doing. I am going to use my lap apron because one of the things about the long wools is that they do tend to be a bit hairy. Like they tend to leave kind of residue behind, like fluff. So let me just turn for you guys and you can sort of see what I'm doing. So I unbraided all of the Wensleydale. Now, the Wensleydale, when you unbraid it, be really, really careful. We have so much sunlight coming in here, you guys. I'm sorry that it's a little bit blown out, but what I could do is zoom in a little bit, and that'll help the camera to darken a little bit. So because it knows what it wants to, what I'm trying to focus on. What I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to split it in half for 2 bobbins because that's actually been working really, really well for spinning these samples each week, and I've been really enjoying that. So I'm just going to get rid of the 1/2 of the 2 ounces of fiber. So that leaves us with this half. And so what we're going to do, you see how when I did that, you see how fluffy it gets? I can put this out here so you can really see it. You see how fluffy that gets, and it just gets really flyaway and really curly. So I just tame it and I add a little bit of a twist. It's sort of like playing with doll's hair kind of thing, or like if you have a little girl or a little boy who have really long hair. I used to do that with the kids, and they find it so relaxing. Like there's a reason why people play with their hair all the time, right? So what you can do If you guys are having some problem with the sound and all this stuff, sometimes when we're flipping around, it sort of affects it. So definitely hit refresh, and then you can. It'll usually resync and it'll kind of fix the problem. Sometimes YouTube just has some hiccups, and if we have a major hiccup and we lose everything, we can fix stuff. So I just took off half of the half so that I'm down to a quarter of the fiber. And what I don't like to spin holding a lot of Wensleydale in my hand. I find that it just gets a bit too messy and there's just too much going on. Welcome, Jennifer. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining us. How is it in Ottawa this morning? Actually, it's noon there. So how is it at noon? Ontario is 3 hours ahead of us. We're going to chat with Mike's parents later. We're hoping that they can come out soon and see the kids, which will be great. So I'm left with an eighth of sort of what was left. Now, what I like to do with the long wools is I do tend to pre-draft them, but I intentionally add a twist, which is why I like not working with such long lengths of fiber. And the reason why I do that is because otherwise it just starts to really fly away. Now, if you want to go finer than this and go thinner than this, you absolutely can. No harm, no foul. And I'm just going to turn here. Now, my Saxony is a little bit difficult to demo on when we're doing the live stream, because it is such it's a bigger wheel. It takes up a bigger footprint. So I'll try as much as I can to sort of demo this as well as I can so that you guys can really see. But just give me a minute to sort of set up, because I think that I'm going to have to tighten my tension here a little bit. I'm in double drive. So what we want with double drive is the ability, let me just turn the wheel a little bit so you guys can see. We want the ability for our yarn and our leader to funnel onto the bobbin well, but then to also be able to pull off. So, oh, still quite humid. Hey, Jennifer. Yeah, maybe some storms. Storms coming. All right, so let me just, I'm going to move. I'm going to kind of ignore chat for just a second, but keep your questions coming. I just want to get going. Just need to tighten it up a little bit more. My bobbin came, one of my bobbins didn't fit when this wheel arrived, and I had to get a new one. So Gord was finally able to get that done for me, and it came in the mail the other day, which is wonderful. So I've got a lot of twist building up in here. So let me just get going here. Let me just get going and you guys will be able to. So you can feel with the long wools when the twist is really building up, because it starts to push past your drafting fingers and it's almost like you can't contain it. You can't keep the twist from going anywhere. It's like you can't hold it back anymore. It's a little bit awkward for me to demo on this while we're live streaming, but that's okay. You guys can sort of see what I'm doing. So I've got my hands quite far apart. I'm holding my fiber supply really lightly, and you can see how it just wants to get really fly away really quickly. It just sort of wants to drift apart. It's a little bit dry. It's not at all compacted because of course this fiber hasn't been dyed at all. Probably a wee bit too fast a ratio for this fiber, so let's have a look at what the plyback test looks like and we'll kind of go from there. This is going to be a little bit thick and thin. So first spin, haven't really done anything, haven't played with it, you know, just started spinning, chit-chatting with you guys while I was spinning, nothing particularly special. And that's kind of what we end up with. So a little bit of a wiry yarn. This is going to soften when it gets washed, but you know, a little bit, nothing. I wouldn't say this is anything particularly special. It's just kind of a first sample. You know, long wools, no elasticity, all about drape. It's not a bad yarn. Now, if I were to spin singles, if I were to spin this as singles, I would go to a slower ratio. So I just move my drive band. I move my drive band to a slower, now it's going to be pulling too much. There we go, a little bit less pull. And the nice thing with double drive is once you find that sweet spot, you're good to go, the whole project. So right now, for a ratio, Hannah, I'm on, I think I'm on, I'm either on 12 to 1 or I'm on 15 to 1, but I can't actually remember. I think I'm on 15 to 1 right now. Some people like lower. Keep getting these chunks. I tend to smooth my long wools quite firmly. And I don't tend to make 3-plies. I find Wensleydale is just a little bit too dense for a 3-ply. It's a little bit too, it just lends itself to other types of yarns. But I encourage you to do a 3-ply just to see. So I think this will make a nice 2-ply, and then I'll show you about how to leave it as a singles. So it's a little bit finer spun for a 2-ply. Just very, very gentle with our fiber supply hand. See how I'm kind of going down the side? So I'm going to use my middle finger and I'm just going to pull up that other fiber and attach it. There are some short bits in this. It's not all uniform. So you can see I'm kind of having to manage the fiber and manage the spinning a little bit. Would it be helpful if I zoomed in a little bit? Yeah, I do stall the wheel sometimes, Eve. Not so much with this one because the momentum of the drive wheel, like the drive wheel is quite significant in size. So I don't tend to stall this wheel, but I do stall my Lendrum sometimes, my other Lendrum. So if I were to spin this as a 2-ply, this is probably how I would spin it. So just very gentle treadling. And then what I would do when I go to ply it is I would just add a little bit more ply twist so that it came off the wheel a bit more kinky and curly. But those low twist singles, sort of moderate to low twist singles, they're not super, super low, but they're certainly not high twist, would relax in the washing and it would create a really lovely yarn. And that is how I spun this yarn. So the Long Way Homestead. So I did 15 to 1, I spun just as I was, and we can count treadles if that would be really helpful. But you can see the difference between these two yarns. So the first yarn, I was really trying to manage the twist. It was just way too much twist. I was having a difficult time. And then the second one, lowered the amount of twist that was going in, kept my treadling the same, but you can see that the yarn's finer spun and a little bit gentler and more uniform. So if I were to spin singles, oh, that's great, Becca. Thanks for chiming in. So if I were to leave this as singles, I always intentionally, and I'll zoom in for you guys so you can see what my fingers are doing, and I'll move over a little bit so you guys can see in the camera. What I do is I intentionally will try to draft more fiber. So if I'm going to spin this as singles, instead of drafting back and just taking a little bit of fiber like this, where I'm really staying at the top side where the tips are, and really just drafting the tops. You see how fine that can get? I mean, that would just make an amazing embroidery thread. Instead, I'm going to move that backhand back a little bit. And I'm going to come into the fiber supply a little bit more. And you see how I'm just grabbing more yarn? Literally, I'm grabbing more fibers. And I'm intentionally spinning thicker. So if we look at what the plyback test would look like, that's quite a bit thicker for a plyback, right? Like that's thick. Look at this. So those other singles that we just spun compared to the thicker one, like that's a big difference. That's a bulky yarn and it's heavy and it's dense. But if left as a singles, it's going to be beautiful. It'll be a sport weight, and it'll, this kink and curl that's in here, that'll wash out and you'll have just an awesome yarn. So you want, I personally find with my singles that I want to have a good plyback, a good plyback. You don't want it to be too airy and too, like if I let the twist dissipate a little bit. You see how now the plyback is, well, actually it's still pretty good. So let me just spin a little bit more. No, it's just got too much twist built up, so that's okay. Let's just break the fiber. And I'll show you guys what I mean. If you let a lot of this twist dissipate, I'm just letting it out. And now you've got a plyback test that looks like that, that's just kind of a little bit lackadaisical. Sometimes it's just not enough twist. See how now I've completely lost it? Often people will spin singles like that, but I can actually draft this apart. I can pull it apart. And the problem with that is that when you can do that, your singles are no longer structurally stable, and they're certainly not structurally sound. And so you need to have a pretty good firm plyback test to make sure that your yarn is able to cope with the tension that's going to be placed on it when it's knit as singles. Like you want to be able to, give it a good firm tug, and it's able to withstand that. It doesn't mean that it's high twist or that they're high twist singles. It just means that it's really nicely twist locked, that the fibers that are overlapping one another, are adequately twisted, that they can't come apart. If they're not, they'll just drift apart. So, and remember that all of those fibers are laying at all different places along your yarn. So you need adequate twist over the whole thing because you've got joins everywhere, right? So when you've got something like this, if it's not got enough twist in it, it's just going to drift apart, and you're not going to have a structurally sound singles yarn. The other thing with singles that I really like to do is I try to put in a uniform amount of twist. So as I'm spinning, I will count to myself 1, 2, 3, and on. 1, 2, 3, and on. And I try to keep my treadling really, really super consistent. So that's certainly something to think about, and something to work toward. Now I'm going to leave this alone, but there's a huge chunk of fiber here that's all caught up. So I guess what I would like to know from you guys is, since my long way homestead was spun one way, would you guys want me to spin this as the same way to create that really lovely 2-ply? Or would you like to see the contrast next week after I get it all spun, of it spun as a singles, and be able to see the differences between those two yarns? I don't mind which one. I just would like to know from you guys what you would like me to do. So let low P is sort of a different way of spinning, and that's created with the inner coat and the outer coat, the tog and the thell, of breeds like Icelandic. So it's a little bit different. You can create let low P like yarns that are really low twist, that are spun and plied to look like a singles, but it's a little bit different. And part of why those yarns work is the characteristics of the fiber. So yeah, singles. Okay. All right. Do the contrast you guys are saying. So singles it is. All right. Perfect. Thanks, you guys. So we'll do singles, and then I'll do a photo shoot before next Saturday, and I'll show you guys the differences between those two yarns. I was going to ask you guys a question. Do you think that you would get better yardage with singles spun the same way, or with the 2-ply spun the same way? I'm glad it's helpful, Hannah. Thank you. All right. While you guys think about that, I'm going to pull in my Enchanté. I'm really, really enjoying this. So this is my Beaumont spin. You can see my Beaumont up here, and I'm holding it with silk, kid mohair and silk lace yarn. So it's got that lovely kind of halo here. And it's ended up having a little bit of a sheen, because the Beaumont doesn't have a sheen, it's a fine wool, and it's just coming out beautifully. So I cast on, what ended up happening was this, my yarn held double is more of like a light DK, and the pattern calls for a worsted weight, but I had row gauge. So, and my gauge was off just enough that if I knit the smallest size, it would give me 4 to 6 inches of positive ease, which is exactly what I wanted, because I wanted it to look like how it was modeled in the picture, and she wears it with about 4 to 6 inches of positive ease is what's written in the thing, the pattern page. So I did the same thing. So I cast on for the smaller size, because my row gauge was my stitch gauge was bigger, and this will give me sort of a finished sort of 36-ish inch bust. And basically you cast on at the bottom, you work your 1x1 twisted rib, and then you work your lace pattern. I did add 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I added 2 extra lace panels to it to make it a little bit longer. So I added about 3 inches of extra length, because I need that in my torso. And now I have actually separated from my fronts and my backs, and I've started working on the back. So the back, you work for about 3.5 inches, which I'm getting close. And then you work your shoulders. And there's a bunch of short row shaping and whatnot at the back. It's got this beautiful sort of, I don't know what you would call it. It's not a crew neck. What's the one that comes down that's like this, but it's not quite so deep? What's that one called? I don't know if it has a name. It's just a round neck. Is that what it's called? So it's just beautiful. This is by a French pattern designer. Her name is Emily Louis, and here is a link to my project page, and that'll take you to the pattern page, and it's available in French, and then you can also download it in English. And I am following the English, although I have looked back at the French one a couple of times just for clarification, just to see if because I think the English translation, there's a couple of things I'm like, am I reading that right? So I just double checked it. So yeah, I'm loving this pattern, and the Beaumont is knitting up beautifully. One of the things that I was going to say, because I was going to weave with the Beaumont, and the reason why I ended up not doing that is because I ended up spinning it. It's 50-50 Beaumont alpaca, because it was too fine to go through the mill in the UK where Eve got it from, to just do 100% Beaumont. And so the alpaca in there, you just don't need a ton of twist with 50% alpaca. Like, it basically spins like an alpaca yarn, because the wool takes a back seat. So a 50-50 blend like that, it ends up being, if it's 50% alpaca, it's going to spin like alpaca. So it resists just a huge amount of twist being put in, whereas the Beaumont's a really, really super fine wool. It can take a lot of twist if it was just Beaumont on its own. And so the yarn ended up being a little bit lower twist than I had actually originally intended it to be. So as I reflected on it and looked at it and I swatched it and I kind of played around with it a little bit, the more I played with it, the more I was like, no, I need to knit with this yarn. It's a knitting yarn, but how can I strengthen it a little bit just because it's on the slightly lower twist side? So you know how we were talking about that spectrum? It's probably kind of about here. It's structurally sound, it's a good yarn, it's not ultra low twist or anything. It's kind of like, you know, on the lower twist side of the sort of structurally stable, structurally sound good hard wearing sweater yarns. It's definitely more over here on the wear me gently, wear me to a you know, a restaurant in the evening when you're dressing up kind of a sweater, kind of a yarn. So what I ended up doing was, because it's being held with the kid mohair and silk, that will actually add a bit of strength to it, because of the nature of these yarns. They're beautiful, but I find them actually a little bit hard to break with my hands. So this lace, it's just absolutely perfect. And we've all worked with this now because it's so popular right now to hold these yarns double with other yarns. And what I really like is, because the Beaumont is sort of more of like a sport weight, the fabric is really light, it's really airy, but it's not too drapey and too open and too like, like it's still a really super nice fabric because of the mohair and that brushed quality of it. It just fills in all those gaps and all those holes. And even more so after it's washed. I'll show you the wash swatch, which I think I showed you guys on the podcast, or maybe I showed you on the Wool Circle. So this is the wash swatch. So you can see this is 4.5 millimeter needles and 4 millimeter needles, and you can see that it's just a really drapey, really lovely. You can't stick your finger through it, but I could have gone down to 3.5 millimeter needles and it would have been fine too. I just would have needed a lot more yardage. So this is the end of the first ball right here, and I've got a whole second ball. I've got about 1,000 yards of yarn, but low twist 2-ply, you've got a huge amount of air in that yarn, so you're going to get really good yardage. So yeah. All right. We had asked about the singles versus the 2-ply, so we'll be able to answer that question next week. My initial thought between the two, so Dana thought maybe the singles you would get better yardage, and with Sarah, she said maybe the 2-ply because there's air between the plies, which is great. Eve says they're both being spun to the same weight, so maybe both yarns, yeah, so she was wondering if I'm gonna do them exactly the same. So I'm gonna try. So they'll both be spun to about 16 wraps per inch. Might even be 18 wraps per inch actually. Anyways, I'll try and spin them about the same. My guess is that the singles will give me better yardage, but I don't know. So we'll have to check that out, and we will also do grist. I'll try and remember. We'll do grist, and then we'll see because they're structurally they're going to be different yarns. So it'll be really interesting to see the difference between the Wensleydale and the spun as a 2-ply and Wensleydale spun as a singles. So yeah, so that's the Beaumont. So let's move into community participation, and we are going to start off with our breed and color study for our next installment. So it started on July 1st. The Wool and Spinning Radio episode has been released to give all of our patrons sort of all of the information, and we will, and I'll share the colors and the fiber with you in just a minute. All right, so I'm hoping that we get to all of our community participation today. We have a lot, but I'm also looking at the time because we have had a very stacked show today, and I'm very aware of the time and that we've got queries and explorations after. So if we don't get to all of the community participation today, we will save it for next week. So breed and color study. I am going to go back to our big screen just for a minute so I can give this adequate space and time. Breed and color study runs as part of the wool and spinning community for 6 months, and then we pivot and we spend the next 6 months doing something else. So this year, what it looked like was January to the end of June, we looked at Shetland and we were looking at combed fiber. On the market, and when we go to festivals, now that we're sort of able to do some of that again, when we go to festivals, when we go to marketplaces, when we walk into a shop that's very spinning and weaving focused, there's always a myriad of fiber. And sometimes we buy fleeces, and sometimes we buy fiber, and sometimes we buy comb top, and we all have stashes chock-a-block full of this stuff, let's be honest. Now, we can't ship raw fleece around the world, and we can't be asking people every 5 minutes to look for weird and wonderful sheep breeds and in the raw fleece. because it's just not realistic. Somebody in England is not going to have a Targhee sitting outside their back window, let's be honest. So, and people in North America aren't going to have some of the really amazing myriad of Scandinavian sheep breeds that are available to them in our backyard. So what Katrina and I had sort of done years and years ago, because now we're coming up like 6 years of doing this now. It's just amazing. June was our 5-year sort of anniversary. We had a lot going on here as a family and we kind of missed it, if you will. But that's okay because we've got lots going on throughout the year. The sort of for our Patreon stuff, I mean. And so what we talked about was, well, instead, let's look at how these fibers can be prepped. So particularly for those of us who've been spinning for a long time, and even for the beginners, we all sort of have this learning journey that we're on, and that includes everything. It includes working with raw fleece. It also includes working with fiber that's already been prepared for us. So so that's what we decided to focus on. So for the first 6 months of the year, we do comb top. And for the second 6 months of the year, we do carded prep. And the underlying, so that's sort of the breed side and the wool side. And then the other side of it is the color. And so that's sort of Katrina's job, is to sort of figure out for our community how to challenge us and how to take us forward, so that as we add color into our spinning and our projects, that we learn what works and what doesn't, what we like, what we don't like. We push ourselves out of our comfort zone. And the idea of this is sort of the general overarching theme is that we are pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and learning how color works. And they might not be our colors, and that's okay. This is supposed to sort of come out of our education budget, if you will. This is not, pick it up at a festival because it's absolutely beautiful and you can't live without it, and then it gets stashed. That's not the purpose of these studies. So with all of that preamble, if you are new to Breed and Color Study, you have not participated before, basically how it works is for patrons of the community, there is a purchasing link that is published that takes them in the first hour when it's first listed to the listing on Crafty Jacks on Katrina's website. For that first hour, there is a discount and they can purchase, and Bob's your uncle. After that first hour at 10 a.m., it becomes public. There is no more discount, and everybody can purchase from there. So the listing and the everything will be coming within the next week, so that you guys have the listing link itself so that you know what to click on. And everything will go live in Katrina's shop on Monday, July 12th at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So that is Monday, July 12th at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So that's just over a week away, and I will be posting the purchasing link on Patreon as we get closer. And that will give you the discount for the first hour of purchasing, and then after that it's just open to everybody. And the cool thing about that is that being open to everybody means that those who are kind of just dipping their toes in and just kind of finding out what we do here can do that without having to make a big commitment or anything like that. So without further ado, for those who've listened to Wool and Spinning Radio already, and I will link that for you guys who haven't listened to it yet, who are part of the Patreon community, so that you can get all the details and all the reasons and all of the excitement from Katrina about the inspiration behind this and the colors and the reasons and all that kind of stuff. I have posted it in the live chat. So for patrons of the show, that's the audio/second video, because it's kind of become a video cast that is provided as a part of your Wool and Spinning Patreon membership. And all of the tiers get that. So even if it's just a couple of dollars a month, which is really appreciated. It keeps the lights on here. So thank you to those who do that and who support the show that way. So any guesses what the fiber is? Let me give you a second so that you guys can guess what the fiber is, and anybody who's listened to the show already will know what the fiber is, and you guys can throw it out there in big capital letters and yell it from the rooftop. I'm so excited about this one. This is actually one of my favorite wools out there. This is actually my favorite thing, one of my favorites to spin, besides Finn and Romney and Wensleydale and everything else. So this is so Becca says this is one of my faves. Sarah knows what it is. She listened to Wool & Spinning Radio. You guys can just throw it out there. We are going to be doing Jacob. So Jacob is, we're still building on our natural colors. We are still building on looking at natural color, and we are still building on looking at color with natural shades. So in the kit, so with the carded studies, there's always two. There's always the one that's created for you, where Katrina has managed the colors for you, and you get to decide how you spin these lovely little nests of fiber. And then there's a kit where she takes everything that's in here, keeps it separate for you, and you decide what you want to do with it. So I'm sorry about it blowing out. The purple is unbelievably bright. The camera cannot pick up how bright it is. It is really bright. You've got natural brown, black Jacob, natural gray Jacob, and then the white, and then you've got all the beautiful colors. And please listen to the Wool & Spinning Radio, because Katrina talks about why these colors and what her inspiration was. This was not based on a photo this time around. This is the first time that we have had a study not based on a photo. And then this is the kit. I'm really excited about spinning this. I can't wait to see what you guys do with this, because there are so many possibilities. You can spin all of these together separately and make 3 separate yarns. You could spin them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and create a yarn like that and spin them one after another. You could break them up and spin them so that you've got 1 strip from this, 1 strip from that, 1 strip from that, and then keep going, like strip it all down into little nests and spin it randomly. You could break them up so that this is your first single, this is your second single, and this is your third single. So you've got a really beautiful marled yarn. The possibilities are endless. And actually, the more that Katrina and I spitballed on the Wool & Spinning Radio episode, the more we were coming up with other stuff. Same with the kit. There's an infinite number of possibilities. And the cool thing about the kit is if you have Jacob in your own stash, you could work that in with this. Which is actually what I'm going to do. I have a whole bunch of black Jacob, and I'm actually thinking I'm going to work it in so that I can create something. Well, I'll be going into that in the fall when I share that with you in the How I Spin content. So that is Breed and Color Study. If you guys have any questions, there is a frequently asked questions FAQ channel in the Slack channel now. And I encourage you to post your questions there so that there isn't a lot of duplicates. So the channel is called Breed and Color FAQ, and Katrina will be checking that regularly from here on out so that her and I can address your questions and answer them. If somebody is wondering if they can order multiples, you absolutely can. And one of the things I like about the carded study is there usually isn't and this round it's the same. There's not the concerns about amounts and quantity. The carded study it's smaller, it's a little bit more contained. Usually most of us are in the hot summer, and so we sort of take that into consideration. The fall is usually a really busy time. So these are 100 grams, 4 ounces. It's actually more like 113 grams, but 4 ounces of fiber, and so there's lots available. So it just takes it takes that mad rush out of it. We can all calm down a little bit, take a deep breath, and we don't have to feel like quite so pressured. And so we can kind of just, it's not such a mad rush. So, which is good. All right. For June, we had our giveaway, for the month of, June, people are starting in various parts of the world that we're starting to open up. We're starting to sort of experience more opening. You guys shared what you are planning to do, and I did a random number generator. One of the comments from YouTube was chosen, and it was Jan's. So she's already sent me her mailing address, which is wonderful. Thank you so much, Jan. And what I've actually done for our May giveaway and our June giveaway, and I'm going to do the same for July, is create some little kits very, very similar to this, where of the different little batlings, the little nests that I made for that you guys haven't seen yet, for all of the content for the camelids. So I'm going to do sort of a myriad of little nests of fiber for you guys, so that you can actually spin along with me. So that'll go out for May, June, and then we'll do it again in July. I might even make enough for August, so then you guys will be able to spin through the camelids with me. So I'll be sending that out to Jan. For July, the month of Tour de Fleece, which is our big thing that's going on right now in our community, and that runs from Saturday, June 26th through to Sunday, July 18th. Tell us what your goals are for the tour this year. So comment in the Ravelry episode thread, which is here. I hope this is the right one. If this is June's by accident, I'm very sorry. Or you can leave a comment here on YouTube for those who don't use Ravelry at all. I have so much community participation to share with you, and we've got about 10 minutes. So let's see how much we get done, because I'm really excited to share it with you, and we'll just get through what we can get through. So we might go a little bit quicker than normal, but and I won't read all of the comments that everybody wrote, but really we're here for the photos, because really the visual inspiration is just amazing. So this is from Maria. She finished up her breeding color just in the nick of time. So this was our Shetland study. I love this yarn. This yarn nailed it. Started off with 4 braids, 1 more, 1 fawn, and 2 white, and she decided to kettle dye each using the same colors, but then she took one of the dyed white braids and over dyed it in gray to tone it down a touch. So that's that. I think that's the one that's the second one in from this side. Each braid was split in half to try out 2 and over dyed it in gray. Oh, sorry. Each braid was split in 2 to try 2 different spins. The first halves were split down and fractal spun. And the second yarn, I'm trying to find the second yarn. I'm really liking the earthy tones. The white base is a bit too light for my liking, but could add a couple of interesting pops of color if used in moderation. The second set was spun in much the same way, but she plied as a 3-ply, making squishy double knit DK weight yarn to use in the yoke of to use as color work in the yoke of the sweater. I love that yarn, that one that just cycled through. That's just amazing. Great for color work. I'm definitely leaning towards the darker tone, the darker skeins. Basically anything with gray or brown undertones works for me. This is beautiful though. Honestly, Maria, this is just absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Wool and Spinning, for the inspiration to try this study. Oh, you're absolutely welcome, Maria, and I hope that you'll join us for the Jacob. This is another one from one of our other Marias in the community. This is for our 51 Yarns Group B. So they're going to be finishing up in December, Group B. And what she did was she took the Stephen West shawl, and it has several of her 51 yarns. So there is teal and purple purple brown from her semi-study, smaller skeins from her fractal BFL and Shetland stripes. She especially likes how the fractal yarn gives life to these sections. I love fractal yarns knit. They're just beautiful. Great question, Josie. She said about Maria's Shetland study just from a minute ago that the white braid was not in these. The white braid is in there, but I think because one of them was over dyed in gray to tone it down. And then the other one was, it wasn't completely white by the end because she had kettle dyed it. So it's got some color on it. So that's why none of them looked truly white. But the lightest one was the white one. All right, so Tour de Fleece. This is a big one. So this is Tour de Fleece to date. Wow. That is all of the Tour de Fleece spinning to date from the time it started, and there's more this morning. I took it as late as I could possibly yesterday so that I would capture absolutely everything, and I thought, oh, it's, you know, it's Friday evening, I can do this now. It won't be too, like, there won't be too, you know, hopefully nobody will post between now and tomorrow morning. And nope, there's even more now. It's just unbelievable. So let's share some of them. This was from Robin. So that's the Slack channel. For anybody who is curious about what the Slack channel looks like, that is it. I do keep mine on dark mode just because I find that it's a little bit less distracting. So this is from Robin, ready to continue my spindle spinning for the first day of Tour de Fleece. 2 spindles on the go, my Russian and Tibetan spindles, orange fibers, untreated merino from Fiber Pusher Fairy, and the Rolex from Fiber Tail Wool. Beautiful spinning, Robin, and I know that she's continued to work on this because there's more photos. This was put together like throughout the week, and you guys keep posting updated photos. So this is just a snapshot in time of what she's been working on, but there are more. I don't know your first name, but you've started knitting with this. So this is from Sid Selvane. I think Scandinavia somewhere, I feel like you're from. Anyways, she's already started knitting this into, I think it's a shawl. It's knitting up beautifully. She's joining in and spinning Rambouillet from Wool Fiend. Just absolutely beautiful. This is from Crystal. I have been loving reading some of your guys' entries. They have been so funny. So this is from Crystal. I had intended to start my BFL fleece, but instead she's been spinning some core spinning from a truly heavenly bat from the Spinner's Stash. I'm such a sucker for anything orange, turquoise, and white. And it's funny actually because I saw this last night, and the kids have been making rainbow loom bracelets like they're going out of style. And I actually, because of this photo, it inspired me, and I made a bracelet, a rainbow loom bracelet with these colors in it, based on Crystal's photo for inspiration. Now, she was debating whether to thread ply it or to coil it, and she was leaning toward coils, and there is a photo on the Slack channel where she did coil it, and it looks amazing. So well done, Crystal. This is from Denise. She's spinning 3-ply for socks. Well done, Denise, well done. This is from Maria. We've got lots of Marias in our community. My Tour de Fleece, Marias and Rebecca's. My Tour de Fleece started with combing, and today I spun the first 32-gram single. I watched football instead of the Tour, but that is okay, I think. Absolutely. I actually don't watch the Tour because we don't have cable television, so it's a little bit difficult to watch. Just absolutely beautiful, and that was her first yarn that she had spun. This is from Dana. I started the tour with Plying this skein from Hello Yarn. Today I started spinning my last braided breeding color study. Bobbin 1 of 3 finished. I love Hello Yarn's colors. This is just absolutely beautiful. And then breeding color. Now, Spindle Spun Summer is running until the autumnal equinox. This is something that we came up with. There's a whole bunch of prizes that we're going to be giving out in September. It'll probably end up being early October by the time we get everything sort of put together. This is from Amy, and the link for Spindle Spun Summer is here. Amy shares learning how to ply on the fly with some fiber from Spindles and Stitches in her Birds of Paradise colorway. Quite a learning curve, not helping by strong winds whenever I attempt to do it outdoors. So funny, Amy. This is from Carissa. She's actually done a huge amount of spinning on this and is actually at the, I think she's almost at the plying stage actually. I don't think that she's here today. She's doing 100% Targhee by Katrina that she bought a few years ago, split up last night for a fractal spinning on her drop spindle, her Turkish spindle, which was made by her husband. And this colorway is called the Pasuta colorway, and I did a fractal in this as well, and it came out beautifully. So Carissa, I think you're going to be really, really happy with that. This is from Charlotte. I love this photo. It's just so peaceful and warm and inviting, and I just couldn't not share it. Little piece of brown bat that made me jump because it looked like a bat, was a dream to spin on the Spanish Peacock supported spindle. I wish I had info on the fiber because it was lovely, fine and soft. I would like to imagine that it has some bison in it. I'm also enjoying the little dimple on the bottom of the spinning bowl, also from Spanish Peacock of all things. It's the little things, she says. This is from Christine. I'm spinning a little bit of cotton every day on my tackly. I found a little bowl at a secondhand shop for $2 that's perfect. Molded into the ceramic underneath, it says we live like this. Oh, molded into the ceramic underneath, it says we live like this, and I like that a lot. That's really cool. This is from Lulu. Excited to get started. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a brand new spinner with no mentor, so I'm just going to dive in. Absolutely, Lulu. Welcome. I just finished my first ever yarn, spindle spun Shetland in natural moret. It was a great learning experience, but didn't turn out at all like I thought it would. Today, I will start spin number 2 and see what I learned this time. All comments and critiques are gratefully accepted. Edited to add that this turned out to be 62 yards and 46 grams, and I thought I was spinning a fingering weight. LOL. The twist seems a bit wrong also. It's all part of the learning, Lulu. It's all part of the experience in getting started. This is from Mary Jo. The last few weeks have been very busy, but I'm spindling every day, even if it's only for a few minutes. Since the solstice, I've been spinning Rolex from Fellview Fibers called Bursting Buds on my favorite spindle, a Schneider glider. I can never say that. Beautiful. And I think that's photographed on a hosta if I'm looking at it correctly. It's just beautiful. Beautiful photo. This is from Kimberly. I have been spinning along with the Spindle Spun Summer, but have not posted yet. My favorite drop spindles are wooden spindles, are spindle woods, and I am spinning Forgotten Stash. First up is the Sweet Georgia 6-pack of BFL Superwash, 1 ounce each of 6 colorways. Kimberly, you have kind of lighted a fire under my butt because I need to get mine spun, and it's been on my spindles for like 6 years, so I need to get it done. So let's do it together. Seriously. I need to get it done. This is Dana. New here, welcome Dana. There's lots of Danas in our community too. But I spin primarily on spindles, and for Tour de Fleece, I have a support spindle project and a drop spindle project going at the same time. I look forward to joining other spindle spinners here. We have a lot of spindle spinners, and they've really been coming out of the woodwork, which is awesome. All right. We have some luxury fibers along, and this one is from Laura. This is an along that we're doing throughout the whole year. Our luxury fibers along is the focus in all of our teaching content, and it's a focus in our making. This is 4 ounces of 70/30 alpaca silk singles, 16 ounces to go, and I'm expecting around 2,000 yards of 2-ply as the end result. Beautiful. It's going to be amazing, Laura. I'd love to hear what you're thinking that you're going to do with it. A big hat or a shawl or a wedding ring shawl, like one of the ones that you can pull through your wedding ring. I would love to hear what your plans are. This is part of our natural shades along. This is from Liz, working on a Gotland spin on a rainy day, fibers from Border Creek Farm. Beautiful spinning, Liz. And it made me excited actually to share the Gotland in a few weeks that we'll be spinning up from Sweet Georgia. This is from Kelly. This is her first 4 Longway Homestead Breed of the Month fibers. So this was Icelandic, Border Cheviot, Wensleydale, and Tunis. Beautiful spinning. I love how that Tunis turned out. Absolutely gorgeous, Kelly. I feel like I shared this one on the podcast before, but I might be wrong. It might just be in my head because I've seen this photo so much now, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, no idea. Suggestions are welcome about her 70/30 alpaca silk. I think you should do a wedding ring shawl. Beautiful. This is from Elizabeth. I think she's actually in the plying stage now because there's been more photos posted since I grabbed this photo. But this is 6 bobbins of Shetland spun up for the body of her breeding color sweater. She'll start plying tonight, and she wanted to have it all plied before the tour started, but she's running behind. Yeah, no doubt. That's a lot of spinning, Elizabeth. Beautiful. Zero to Hero. This is from Sue. Zero to Hero. Again, this is fiber to finished object. We work on this throughout the year, and then we start it fresh again in January, just to get a new thread, not because you have to start a new project. The 2.5 months of spinning, the white Shetland is waiting for me to be brave enough to dye it in 5 different colors. The brown Corriedale is ready to do a 3-ply. I may need more, but it is a good start to what I need, and she'll finish it and measure it, and then she'll know if she needs more. This is all for the Stern Trotter, I'm not exactly sure how to say that, by Kate Davies, and that's the sweater pattern there. Eve has actually finished this now, but these are 3 bobbins ready to ply, and this is her Beaumont alpaca spin. So well done, Eve. She's got her sheep covers on her Magikrafts Susie there. This is from Ruth. I was really excited to share this with you guys. Since the beginning of April, I've been working on pre-mixed blends of wool, silk, and flax. This sweater is the result of that exploration. The fawn is a Shetland Tussa toe flax blend from Hip Strings. The colors are a blend of merino, tussa, and flax from Inglenook, where I took the base color turquoise and blended it with some additional merino and tans and yellows. For the greens and purples and for the darks with hand cards, my questions now center around the combination of wool and flax and the handling of what seems to me extremely different care needs. You certainly would not want to boil the finished yarn to get the best from the flax, and gentle washing of wool leaves the flax in a long lifeline to become its best. The sweater is Surprise, my own pattern. It's always Ruth's own pattern, or she cobbles together patterns, which I love, based on gauge and percentages. I took basic instructions from the shoulder yoke recipe in the book, Knitting in the Old Way by Priscilla A. Gibson Roberts. I've actually never heard of that book, so I looked it up. This sweater looks great on you, Ruth. The color work was a riff on the Pearl Soho Falling Snow chart. All the above and so many more lessons were learned, and at the end I have this lovely unique cardigan. Cheers to the experiments we undertake as makers, and I've linked in the show notes her project page so you guys can have a look at that. Well done, Ruth, and thank you so much for sharing with us. This is from Maria. Super happy with her latest knit, The Weekender. This is by a pattern by Andrea Mowry, and I just was so excited to share this as well because it turned out beautifully, Maria. I love your photos. So she recently bought a drum carder and had fun carding up some Tweety bats in various colorways. Some of the base fiber was raw fleece she processed herself, some commercially prepped fiber, mostly Shetland and BFL, with some merino and a sprinkling of sari silk. I carded twice, then dizzed off the roving. I mostly use short backward draw when spinning, resulting in a semi-woolen yarn. It's beautiful. The skeins had a bath in fairly hot water, and then she ended up with 1,500 yards of worsted weight yarn in mixed colors. But wasn't sure the best way to use it. I have had the Weekender in my queue for an age and thought it would work in stripes. It worked out better than I could have imagined. The fit is great, and I love the play of the colors together. I love knitting with hand spun. Each stitch is an adventure of color and texture, and I enjoy the element of surprise. I especially like the pops of orange in the sleeves. Beautiful, Maria, and thank you so much for sharing. So I found a very appropriate quote for our sample spinning and play that we've been really focusing on the last couple of months, and kind of inserting this final section of community participation into the podcast. And it's by Carl Jung. It says, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct." So along with that in mind, this is from Nicole. Finished up my first 4-ply yarn. I quartered and then split up 1 red braid of Polworth from Abstract Fiber and 1 orange and black braid of Targhee from Deep Dyed Yarns. And then spun it up randomly on my Lendrum DT into four singles with continuous back. The main skein is 390 yards, 220 grams, for a grist of approximately 797 yards per pound, a little over 11 wraps per inch. I really love how round it turned out, and I'm thinking that I'm probably going to spin up some CVM from my stash to see what sweater patterns match with the yardage I got. Beautiful. Nicole, this would be amazing for the yoke of a sweater, like the Aurelius by Jen Steinglass. That would be just awesome, because you get that sensation of the Northern Lights. It would just be phenomenal. Vicky, this is beautiful, this spin, Vicky. It was an exhaust braid. I dyed earlier this year. I forgot to take a photograph of it when I started spinning it, so I'll post the same picture I put. So this was fractal spun 2-ply sport weight, 600 yards, 150 grams of merino yarn. Dang, it is soft. How did I get 600 yards of yarn with a sport weight from 100 grams? I'll tell you how. There's air, a lot of air in that yarn. That's why you like it so much. It's light and lofty and airy, but beautifully spun, Vicky. Just gorgeous. Seriously asking, in all my years of spinning, I've never gotten this kind of yardage. It's just the airiness of it. It's just beautiful. That's why I like continuous back so much. This is from Barb. I'm excited to share these with you. These are pillows. Is this spinning, weaving, or sewing? What? It's all three. Absolutely. Beautiful, Barb. I love the colors. I want pillows like this. Could you make me some and send them to me? This is from Kat. And because I have the attention span of a slightly demented goldfish, I have started this crochet project inspired by the work of Sophie Dygard. I have a bunch of hand-dyed merino singles I dyed for a shawl for a make-along, but I ended up not liking it and they have languished ever since. I love this. I think this is so cool. And I love that, yeah, the slightly demented goldfish. When I read that the first time, I actually laughed out loud. I think that is so funny. Beautiful. Dana, last one. I finished up a couple of hats using leftover hand spun. The colorful hand spun was used in 2 shift cowls and now 2 hats, and I still have some left over. This is Flicker and Flame from Andrea Mowry. Beautiful, Dana. Always beautiful knitting and spinning from you. All of you guys. Thank you so much for all of your sharing today and for all of your time that you spend in the community sharing with one another and inspiring one another, helping, supporting. I really appreciate it. Anybody who's in very hot temperatures over the next couple of weeks, please stay safe. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. And I will see you next weekend. We've got lots coming up this week. We've got a maker morning. We've got the wool circle. We've got quite a lot going on. So the maker morning this coming Thursday is at 7 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. You do not need to sign up anymore. You can just come. If we get too many people, we'll just go into breakout rooms. So please just come, and the Zoom link, I will post it in the Slack channel, and I'll also post it on Patreon, so everyone is welcome. We also have a wool circle for those who are part of that on Friday. And then I'll see you guys in the live stream next Saturday. So until then, happy spinning. Bye, guys.